Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live streaming of basic transfer pricing. No? Thank you very much sa ating mga subscribers. Umabot na po tayo ng 699 subscribers. No? Thank you very much. Our topic tonight is about this country by country report, no? Documentation, the importance of documentation. So very important. And naka-partner po siya dito sa ating case, which is the part 3 po ng Pharma Distributor, no? Versus the High Court, Eastern High Court ng Denmark. No? Kasi in that case, naka-explain po dyan yung importance how the court made use of the documentation submitted by the taxpayer, no? Because it is but timely in our case here in the Philippines that the tax authority, the BIR or the Bureau of Internal Revenue also require that all related party transactions with that reaches a certain threshold should attach in their annual income tax return the BIR Form 1709 on related party transactions. And of course, those companies who have related party transactions to prepare their documentation. No? So this country by country report, ito ang controversial to no na reporting because so many taxpayers are complaining about this country by country report. But we will discuss that the requirements of the country by country reporting, especially as required by the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. No, we have here the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. Ito yung 2017, July 2017, transfer pricing guidelines of the OECD. So we have here the 3/3 transfer pricing documentation, and we have the master file. We also have the local file, and the very important is the country by country report. No? Okay. Okay. So why is it that transfer pricing documentation are very important? Because if you have enough or if you provide transfer pricing, comprehensive transfer pricing documentation, then it will save you from a lot of trouble, especially on the transfer pricing adjustment if there is already a transfer pricing audit. And what are the purposes of this documentation? Okay. So what are the purpose or the objectives of this transfer pricing documentation requirements? Why are the taxpayers with related party transactions are required to submit these transfer pricing documentations, no? So, ilan na yung ating viewers?
Viewers from na 7.
Okay, so shout out po sa mga viewers natin, no? Thank you very much for watching. No, so we have 3 objectives of the transfer pricing documentation. Number 1, to ensure that taxpayers give appropriate consideration to transfer pricing requirements in establishing prices and other conditions for transactions between associated enterprises and in reporting the income derived from such transactions in their tax return. No? So ito yung establishment of prices. At ano yun? It should conform with the arm's length principle. Alam nyo, I'm already, I have completed 1 transfer pricing study as of now pa lang, no? And there are so many, may mga dagdag pa. Siguro mga 13 na transfer pricing analysis ang gagawin natin, no? But I'm sad and worried for those others na hindi talaga sila papasa. Ibig sabihin, during the transfer pricing analysis, it is really very apparent that their transactions are not arm's length, and also the pricing that they are doing has no commercial reason or no commercial rationality or no business reasons, no? Hindi talaga papasa. But I also told the management about it. Why? Because di mo naman pwedeng baguhin yung result ng analysis mo eh. If they really don't observe the arm's length principle, makikita yun on their data, no? Kasi analysis ka lang naman eh. So what are you going to do in that case? You just inform the management, no? And then you give you cannot change the report, no? You cannot change the result. So you just inform the management about it. Number 2, to provide tax administration with the information necessary to conduct an informed transfer pricing risk assessment. What are these transfer pricing risk? Risk na ma-assess yung taxpayer during the transfer pricing audit because there are transfer pricing issues, no? And number 3, objective of transfer pricing documentation, why they are very important, to provide tax administrations with useful information to employ in conducting an appropriately thorough audit of the transfer pricing practices of entities subject to tax in their jurisdiction, although it may be necessary to supplement the documentation with additional information as the audit progresses. Kaya sabi ko sa inyo, even if meron ng saramo natin 1-2019, which is the transfer pricing audit guidelines, even if there are requirements, list of documents that are required in that listing, no? Sabi ko sa inyo, still the examiner can ask for additional document if the examiner found out that based on the documents submitted, there are still transfer pricing issues that should be clarified, no? So hindi siya limited doon lang sa list of documents na hinihingi niya, pwede pa siya manghingi ng other documents relevant to the issue under audit, no? Kaya sabi na, hingi ka ng hingi na naman, ibang dokumento na naman, pwede po yan, no? Just like for example, yung ginawa ko, no? Kasi I audit my transfer pricing issues and then I ask for a transfer pricing analysis report. No, nag-submit sila and their transfer pricing method used is cost plus method, no? Along the way, tiningnan ko, I recommended for a profit split method, no? And during the time, I asked for additional documents just like meron palang intangibles na being used by the related party coming from another related party. So those are potential transfer pricing issues, no? I asked additional documents during that time. Okay. So, taxpayers' assessment of compliance with the arm's length principle. That's the purpose of the transfer pricing documentation. No? You have to prove that the taxpayer observed the arm's length principle in pricing its goods and services. No? If the goods and services are transferred between the related parties, then it must observe the arm's length principle. And what is the arm's length principle? The business transactions, commercial and financial transactions between related parties should be comparable or similar with that of the independent party transactions. If not, pwedeng ma-assess, no? There is a tendency that the examiner will have a transfer pricing audit adjustment later on. And that adjustment will be the source of assessment or additional taxes that you are going to pay or what we call as deficiency taxes. No? Okay. So what are these country by country report? No? So i-flash mo, Hari, sa kanila yung model template for the country by country reports. No? So these are the reports that the group are going to submit and titingnan natin what are the information required in this transfer pricing documentation, no? So we have here table 1, overview of allocations of income, taxes, and business activities by tax jurisdiction. Sa lahat kasi ng three-third documentation requirement ng OECD, itong country by country reporting ang napaka tedious, no? So we have the tax jurisdiction. Sino yung mga tax jurisdiction? Yung mga tax authorities of the country, no? So we have here the revenues, no? So revenues will be coming from unrelated party and also from related party. So you have there the column, no? And then the total. Next column is the profit and loss before income tax, no? So what is the profit and loss before income tax? So kasi ang profit and loss, karamihan dyan, operating expenses, direct cost equals gross profit less operating expenses equals the income before income tax, no? We have also the next column, income tax paid on cash basis, no? So ito yung income tax na binayaran on cash basis. And then income tax accrued current year, no? So may column, magkano ba yung na-accrued na tax at magkano yung tax talagang binayaran. And then how much is the stated capital, no? Why? Because the stated capital, unang tingin mo pa lang, ma-assess mo na how big is the company, no? Based on the capital or the shared capital na meron siya. And then we have the stated capital pala, no? And we have the accumulated earnings. How much is the accumulated earnings of the company, no? Accumulated earnings, this is a residual account wherein all the income of the company through the years are content or added to this account. Yan yung accumulated earnings. And then the number of employees, no? Number of employees per tax jurisdiction. If you try to look at these requirements, because the number of employees can be the basis for the profit split, no? Kasi sa susunod, i-discuss natin yung profit split, the new guidance ng 2018 ng profit split, no? And then we have tangible assets other than cash and cash equivalents. So what are the tangible assets? So ito yung mga property, plant, and equipment natin, no? So what are those tangible assets other than cash and cash equivalent, no? So yung cash and cash equivalent, yan yung mga liquid na assets, no? Okay. So ilan na yung viewers natin?
6 viewers.
So shout out tayo ulit sa mga viewers natin, ha. Yung shout out to Emily, no? Sinabihan ko sila na mga i-text mo rin si Banji para sila, no? Makapakinig sila, reminder. Okay? So yan po yung ating country by country report. And then yung letter A, we have our table 2, no? Ito yung list of all the constituent entities of the MNE group included in its aggregation per tax jurisdiction. Ano yung aggregation? Yan yung segmentation, no? So kasama sila. Constituent are the members of the group, no? So kasama sila. So aggregation per tax jurisdiction, ibig sabihin yung total na income ng parents aggregate sila o binigay sila, sinigmentay sila per tax jurisdiction. Halimbawa, sa BIR dito sa Pilipinas, sa Singapore, sa Malaysia, no, nakasigmentay siya. So tax jurisdiction, and yun po yung first column, ha. And then what are or who are the constituent entities resident in the tax jurisdiction. Halimbawa dito sa Pilipinas, no, tax jurisdiction Philippines, which is the BIR. Meron siya halimbawa na 3 related parties dito. So sino 'yan? Si A, si B at saka si C. No, halimbawa. And then the tax jurisdiction of organization or incorporation of different, if different from tax jurisdiction of residence, no? So, yun yung sinasabi dito, yung tax jurisdiction kung naiba pa siya doon sa jurisdiction ng residence. Ilalagay din po natin, no? And then we have the kung ano itong functions niya, no? Ito yung nakalagay dito. Whether it is research and development, no? Ito yung 1, 2, 3, fourth column. And then we have the holding of or managing intellectual property. Ito yung mga IP hub, no? And then we have the purchasing or procurement, no? So purchasing or procurement, ito yung functions ng company. And then we have the manufacturing or production, no? So these are very important na functions ng companies. And then we have the sales, marketing, or distribution, no? Napakaliit kasi kaya masyado makikita. And then we have the administrative, management, or support services. Also remember, these are the functions of the company. Or we have the provider of services to unrelated parties, no? So pwede din siya na provision of services to unrelated parties. Also, yun yung constituent companies, yun ang functions niya. And then we have the internal group finance. So, yung functions niya is financing another related parties. And then we have the registered financial services, no? So, giving financial services to other group or to independent parties. And we have insurance, no? We have holding, holding shares of other equity instruments, no? Sobrang liit, di makita. And then we have the dormant, kung dormant siya, walang activity, and others, no? So you have to put it there. Ito yung main business activities niya. In short, ito yung mga functions na nakalagay. Also, this is country-by-country reporting. Ibig sabihin, ilang tax jurisdictions yun nandito, especially if the companies or the group are operating in different countries. So, lahat yan i-report nyo. So, ang country-by-country reporting is parang nakasummarize na siya according to tax jurisdiction. Kaya nakalagay dyan kung magkano, no? Magkano yung business, niya. Nakalagay yung constituent and then the tax jurisdiction and then yung main business activities niya. Oh? Dito sa isa naman, ito yung table 1 kanina, nandyan yung amount, no? Kasi yung sa table 2, nakalagay lang dyan yung description, yung main business activities of the company. No? So, for the template of the country-by-country report, no? Anong purpose niya? This integral part of the model template for the country-by-country report. No? Kaya mabilis lang siya i-fill up because may sample na. No? But in the country-by-country reporting na mga conventions, no? Talagang dinidiscuss pa nila yung explanations as per column, no? So, for the constituent entities, sino itong mga constituent entities na to? Sila yung members of the group, and these constituent entities perform different functions, no? But the operation usually is highly integrated because each kind of company are performing differently doon sa kung ano yung purpose niya at kailangan siya in the whole operation of the group. No? Okay. So yun po yung template natin in country by country reporting. And in this example also, meron pang model legislation related to country by country reporting. Yan ay kung i-adapt siya ng mga local companies, no? So, ano pa yung ibang mga issues sa country by country reporting, especially if the financial statements are disaggregated or ginawang segmentized. Ano pa yung mga issues doon? Yung pag-disaggregate o pag-segmentize ng mga information, ano yung sabi ng under the report na nung sa country by country report, ang sabi nila is that ang um, sa country by country reporting na implementation natin, the country by country reports are disaggregated, no, or segmentized, and it follows accounting standards, to. Kasi sabi nila ang hirap, ang daming nagrereklamo dahil mahirap at saka mahirap i-prepare yung kailangan na reports. That's why we discussed this country by country reporting. Why? Kasi I want you to prepare for the segmented information that will be required to you. Kasi ang napakarami na feedback, no, doon sa deliberation nila or sa the discussion nila sa country by country report, ang pinakamaraming feedback doon is the difficulties in preparing this country by country reporting. Pero sabi ko naman, para sa akin, if you are updated with your books, no, books and records, hindi kayo mahihirapan, no? Kasi lagay na diyan yung operations during the month, no? So balikan mo na lang 'yun, hindi ka na mahirapan pagdating sa documentation. Ang pinakamahirap na aspect po ng transfer pricing is documentation talaga, no? Kasi madali lang naman gumawa ng mga analysis, ng mga reports if you have the source document. Pero kung gagawa ka na ng report, wala ka pang source document, yun ang pinakamahirap, no? And yung good documentation will save you from a lot of trouble. Why? Kasi pagdating sa korte, saan ba sila nagre-rely? Sa documentation. No? Kung ano yung sinabit mo for resolution ng court, doon na sila magbabangkon. No? So very, very important na kompleto yung documentation mo so that pagdating na doon sa korte, no? Kung dumating na doon yung dispute on the transfer pricing issues, then hindi ka mahirapan because I have seen some cases decided by this court, no, na mga foreign courts. May mga instances doon that the taxpayer, even if they are employing some transfer pricing strategies, no, para makatipid. But since lahat ng sales nila are properly accounted and then properly reported and then properly recognized, no? So, in that case, nakita ko, panalo pa rin yung taxpayer, hindi nanalo ang tax authority. So, the judge or the court was convinced na arm's length yung transaction because kumpleto sila lahat ng documentation, no? And that helps the taxpayers from a lot of future adjustment, no? Yung future adjustment na yan, yun yung maging result yan is the deficiency taxes, no? And sometimes it's a very huge amount. Ako, makapagawa ka na ng kahit 100 companies. Biro mo yung celebrated case, how much is the deficiency income? 3.1 billion, no? So, hindi lang 100 na bagong company mapapagawa mo doon, marami, no? Because of so much money na talo sila because of that documentation, hindi nila ma-justify, no? Okay. So for the country by country reporting, be sure na mayroon kayong pinagmula ng information. That's why yung recording natin sa books of accounts natin and in our day-to-day na business, no? So, kailangan yan, may records tayo. And isa pa, yung disaggregation or segmentation of financial statements. Be sure na meron kayong nakaset na system wherein lahat ng products, lahat ng kung paano siya na-segmentize, no? Line of business, dapat ready kayo for the segmented information. Kasi kung wala, mahihirapan kayong gumawa ng report, no? Okay. So, ilan na yung ating viewers?
8 viewers.
10? 8? So shout out kay na Banji, no? At saka si JM, si Jescon, si Jacob, and then shout out din kay Banji, no? Saka kay Emily and yung family niya. Kasi sinabihan ko sila na manood eh. No? Okay. So, yun po yung importance ng documentation natin at ang pinakamahirap na daming nag-o-object yung country by country report. No? Na although yun nga may threshold na siya, just like 750 million euros in the in Europe, yun yung threshold. Pero doon sa mga hindi umabot doon sa threshold, although hindi sila required to submit a transfer pricing documentation, but of course, they will also be subjected to audit, no? So, yung audit, wala yung threshold, no? Basta pagka issue ka ng letters of authority, all taxes, kasama na dyan ang transfer pricing, no? Especially if there are transfer pricing issues na makita doon sa documentation ninyo, no? Kaya nga itong AS, Pharma Distributor na AS, no, itong case na din-discuss natin ngayon. Sabi ng court, yung mga allegations mo na hindi acceptable sa financial reporting, no, at saka sa standards, sabi niya, sa iyo din naman galing yun, no, sa report na binigay mo. Kaya yung mga binibigay natin na report, sometimes yun pa yung magiging source of assessment sa atin, no? Kaya careful. Okay. So, tuloy po tayo, no? Wala tayong mga questions doon sa documentation, country by country reports. Very, very important. No? So, tuloy po tayo dito sa ating case, no? Nasaan na tayo? Dito na tayo sa IT cost, tama ba, Are? Okay. So, dito na tayo sa IT cost, no? Ano ba nangyari dito sa IT cost at na-assess itong Pharma Distributor, no? And the assessment is for the years 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, no? So, marami silang mga findings dito at isa na itong IT cost kung bakit dinidisallow din itong IT cost, no? So, in the period after the merger between G6 and A, kasi ang nangyari dito, yung mga group of companies nag-merge, no? Tapos nagdi-demerge. Okay. So, what happened in this case? So, in the period after the merger between G6 and A, two types of extraordinary IT costs were incurred. No? So, ano palang nangyari dito? Extraordinary yung IT cost. Why? Kasi hindi siya regular. No? On the other hand, there were two IT systems that had to be maintained. Oh, so dalawa yung IT system nila. And on the other hand, there were two non-recurring costs that arose as a consequence of the IT integration between the companies, no? So may cost kasi ang integration, no, ng companies, especially kung nag-merge sila o kaya meron silang dalawang system tapos ngayon mag-merge na. Okay. Non-recurring costs that arose as a consequence of the IT integration between the companies. In 2004, G5AS, letter G3AS, entered into an agreement with the supplier, no? G19 on outsourcing the company's IT operation for a 5-year period So if outsource ba nila, no? To a value of approximately 55 million, no? Dennis Krohn starting from January 2004, no? So yun yung in-apply, no? Yung 5-year period to the value of approximately 55 million Dennis Krohn, no? Nag-start ng January of 2004. And remember, yung ating issues dito is for the year 2006 to 2010, no? So yun yung point of dispute. As a result of A's acquisition of G6 on a global level, with the consequent changes in company law in Denmark, where G6 merged with A, no, on January 2006, the above-mentioned agreement was terminated when it was decided to use A's IT infrastructure, as G8 was to function as the continuing company in the future. No? So, yun yung ginagawa nila, nag-merge, nagdi-demerge, tapos mag-merge ulit, no? Bakit? Because along the way, may mga i-absorb sila ng mga expenses and then i-amortize ang laki, no? So, the agreement with Inventor was basically non-cancelable in the initial period of 5 years. So, pumapasok sila sa agreement na non-cancelable. And long-term pa, no? Kasi 5 years. According to the terms of the contract, however, it was possible to terminate the agreement in the present situation, which is why it was terminated on June 27, 2006, until expiration on January 1, 2007. No? So, sabi naman, pwede naman i-rescind yung contract, no? Or i-cancel. Thereafter, costs were incurred in 2006 for the operation of the IT infrastructure in G3AS, despite the fact that A had a functioning IT system of a total of approximately 12 million, no? For the whole year. No? You can just imagine the IT, no? IT systems infrastructure niya. Another aspect of IT operations that further burdened A financially, kaya ang laki ng gastos, no? Was the integration between the ERP system in J6 and the A, no? Yun yung integration ng data. Okay. The systematic merger of the two ERP systems took place by transferring all transactions in the period from the date of the merger on January 1, 2006 to August 31, 2006. So, tinransfer nila lahat ng data from G9 to A's ERP system so that a complete version of the accounts in A's ERP system, the cost in connection with this, which amounted to a total of approximately 11.6 million, no? Naglipat lang ng data sa computer, was a necessary cost for ensuring data integrity in the financial and quality registrations to public authorities as well as for use in internal reporting in the group, no? So yun yung justification nila. The company has estimated an amount arising from the later type of cost estimated at DKK, no, Dennis Krohn, 10 million, no? 10 million naman. As being of an extraordinary nature. Tama, kasi hindi naman siya regular. Kaya extraordinary, no? Madalang lang nangyayari. In relation to the calculation of the adjusted earnings before income tax result in the transfer pricing documentation. Yan, no? Kasi nagkaroon ng adjusted na earnings before income tax. Ano tong earnings before income tax? Ito yung taxable base pag nag-compute ka ng income tax due mo. Bakit? Kasi itong earnings before income tax, ito yung i-multiply mo sa tax rate. Kung halimbawa, corporation ka here in the Philippines, itong earnings before income tax, multiply mo by the 30% corporate income tax rate, then you have your tax due. No? Okay. So the amount is probably higher in reality, but it has reference to the fact that there have been costs from the operation of J3AS, no? IT infrastructure. Siyempre may cost yun kasi nag-integrate sila. Despite the fact that it was a infrastructure that was to be used in the future, and partly that the merged company had additional operational IT costs derived from the integration and validation of data integrity between the two ERP systems, which the companies would not have had if they had not merged. No? Kaya nga ang dami nangyayari during the merger. Alam niyo, tanong ko na rin yan sa isip ko noon eh. Bakit kaya kailangan mag-merge? Merge ng merge ng merge, no? May purpose pala yan. Nakakatipid sila sa taxes, no? So according to the company, in a situation such as this, SCAT, which is the tax authority of Denmark, will make a correction with an amount which means that earnings are adjusted to a point in the interval that in SCAT's opinion best reflects the arm's length value of the tested functions of the legal guide, no? So yan yung law sa Denmark. In this case, on the other hand, Scott has earmarked the correction for an amount corresponding to the amortization of goodwill and extraordinary expenses recognized in A for the implementation of IT. So this is an unusual and arbitrary approach, as the result of the correction accidentally means that earnings before income tax, or EBIT, calculated in SCAT view of comparability will thus be at a level corresponding to the median in the arm's length range. No? Estimation or burden of proof. Kanino ba ang burden of proof? Siyempre, the one who alleges. No? Sino ba yung nag-allege? Is it the tax authority or is it the taxpayer? Then, sa kanya yung burden of proof. So initially, it was pointed out that SCAT has not examined the individual transactions in more detail. No? Sabi natin, ang transfer pricing audit is factual. Hindi niya na examine in detail. No? And has thus not related to the company's earning during the period being below price due to changes in sales prices to independent customers and market conditions in the Danish market. No? Then, among other things, referred to the Tax Control Act, Section 3B, with preparation, work, and others. It appears from this that in order for SCAT to be entitled to make an assessment at its discretion, it is necessary that error can be demonstrated in the accounting basis. The statutory transfer pricing documentation. No? Yan na yung transfer pricing documentation, no? Na sinasabi dito arbitrary. Statutory. Ibig sabihin ng statutory, required by law. No? So in this case, SCAT has not identified significant errors or deficiencies in the statutory transfer pricing documentations. Furthermore, it is not probable that the transaction did not take place on arm's length terms. No? Okay, so hindi arm's length yung transactions. Okay. The documentation provided by A is sufficient to assess whether the company has traded on arm's length terms in its intra-group transactions. No? It is noted in this connection that SCAT itself has based the company's database analysis and the submitted arm's length range on the income change. No? So reference is made to circular number 84 of May 15, 1988, as well as number 42 of 24 January 2006. No, the latter executive order states, among other things, that the documentation must contain the descriptions and analysis described in Section 4-8 of the executive order. The requirement pursuant to Section 4-8 includes the following. No? The documentation must include a comparability analysis which can form the basis for an assessment of whether the principles for pricing the controlled transactions are in accordance with the arm's length principle. No? The analysis must also contain an explanation of why the pricing is judged to be in accordance with the arm's length principle, including an explanation of the comparable independent transactions used and justification for the choice of method. No? So yun po yung sabi ko sa inyo na napaka-importante ng documentation. In assessing whether the documentation is missing or incomplete, a holistic and proportionality consideration must also be taken, which means that the content and financial significance of the transaction should be included in the assessment. If the funds used against the taxpayer are not in accordance with the size of the relationship, the volume, nature, and complexity of the transaction, there will be abuse of power, no? And distortion, as well as disregard for the taxpayer's legal certainty. If there is no proportionality in the use of sanctions, all other things being equal, there will be unjustified discrimination. And according to the principle of proportionality, a decision must not be based on unreasonable considerations nor be measured farther than the target dictates. No? So, yan ang transfer pricing. No? Scott decision is a violation of the above legal principles. No? So, ito na, mali daw talaga ang Scott. The factual requirements for the exercise of discretion do not exist, and therefore the authority for Scott to make discretionary adjustment has been exceeded. No? Hindi na siya pwedeng gumawa ng discretionary adjustments. No? So these are very important. Yung sabi niya dito na the factual requirements for the exercise of discretion do not exist. No? Okay. Supplementary post of August 30, 2013. No? To Scott citation of transfer pricing guidance 2.62 that net gains are less sensitive to transactional differences. It is stated that it is a general assumption that the use of net gain may resolve issues concerning lack of knowledge of cost classification. No? So, walang alam sa cost classification. In this case, on the other hand, there is a concrete, a typical material defect in relation to comparability that cannot be resolved without adjustment. No? So, papaano ka daw makapag-resolve kung wala siyang adjustment, no? So, to quote Transfer Pricing Guidance 2.63, which relates to the practical advantage by applying a unilateral approach to examining the company's earnings for the tested party, which in this case is A, and not necessarily examining the financial indicator for the other party, contributing to the value creation of the control transaction. That the point hereafter has nothing to do with the study of the data used as a basis for comparison. No? So, nasa supplementary post siya. Okay. May viewers pa? Okay. Okay. So, to Scott comments that the company has demonstrated that no corresponding costs are included in the company's analysis. It is stated that Scott has not previously challenged the factual basis in this way. No? Notwithstanding this, the company has examined the conditions relating to 2009 and 2010 in which above 31 companies are included in the comparison. No? So, kaya yun yung gumagawa kami ng transfer pricing analysis na mag-umpisa ka talaga sa more than 30 companies and then inarrow mo na siya, i-reject mo yung iba or eliminate the others. No? They are included in the comparison. No? Of these 31 companies, it has been possible to obtain accounts for 27 companies, of which it has not been possible for the 23 companies to identify goodwill, while for the remaining 4 companies, insignificant goodwill or intangible assets have been found insignificant, no? So it is defined by the fact that the adjustment of amortization has no effect on the quartiles for the arm's length range, no? Kasi yun, paano ba sabi natin ng arm's length range? Sabi ng OECD, between 25 and 75. Halimbawa, may range ka ng gross profit mo. Halimbawa, 1 to 200, no? So, along that way, saan ba magpo-fall yung 25% hanggang 75% mo na acceptable in the range? And usually, it is the median, no? Yung middle. Okay. Okay. So, according to the company, it is hereby further documented that there is no significant amortization of goodwill in the accounts of the companies compared with. No? In its justification for the income increase, Scott has referred to Section 5.1 of the Tax Control Act, Art 3 and Paragraph 8, and thus the decision in the legal sense is a discretionary employment or tax estimate. Discretionary kasi siya, kaya tax estimate lang, no? So, discretion. The authority's statement to the complaint states Scott must admit that the reference to the Tax Control Act Section 3B, Section 8 and Section 5, Paragraph 3 may seem confusing, and Scott has thus not disregarded it in the transfer pricing documentation that the company has prepared. No? So, Scott's correction contained a certain element of estimate, as Scott has not disregarded the company's choice of method. Okay. Scott's statement can immediately be read as a change in the reasoning for the decision, but it is not clear whether it should be understood as such. In a tax assessment, it is important that it is clear to the taxpayer which errors or deficiencies in the documentation are in question. No? So there is a lack of a description of the factual errors and omissions in a statutory transfer pricing documentation. No, statutory, ibig sabihin mandatory yan. And what significance the possible deficiencies have for an arm's length assessment. No? Ano daw yung mga possible deficiencies? A discretionary employment which as here lacks justification for what deficiencies Scott has found, no? So obviously makes it difficult to complain specifically about this matter. No? This should mean that the decision is in principle declared invalid. No? Okay. To Scott's remark on investigation at transaction level, no, is listed. So, nag-remark naman si Scott kasi siya yung tax authority, siya yung nag-assess, no? Scott explains in the statement that the lack of investigation or at transaction level is due to the fact that A has not carried out an analysis at transactions level, no? Our comment in the is that A has carried out a comparability analysis which documents that the total earnings fall within an arm's length range. no? So in relation to the calculation of the total taxable income in Denmark, this analysis indicates that consolidated transactions have been traded at arm's length prices. No? There are therefore no circumstances which indicate that it should be necessary for the taxpayer to carry out further investigation in his own in connection with the obligation to prepare the statutory transfer pricing documentation. No? Should the analysis have indicated that there may be an arm's length issue, it would be natural to conduct further investigation. No? Scott has not done that. No? So si Scott, on the other hand, compiles accounting key figures for A for the purpose of a comparison with a view of the earnings in A falling outside an arm's length range. Of course, there is no authority to change A's income, no? Simply because the company has accounting deficits. And in that regard, it is pertinent to note that there is no reserve burden of proof or presumption that controlled transactions have not taken place on arm's length terms. No? Okay. So in further supplementary submission, the company elaborated on its pleas in accordance with the above description. No? It is then that company's overall view that ACE transfer pricing documentation meet the requirements and guidelines that apply to the preparation of SATs and that it documents that ACE pricing of intragroup transactions has taken place on arm's length terms. No? As ACE earnings are within the arm's length range for comparable companies. No? In a consultation response to the Danish Tax Appeals Board recommendation and Scott's consultation response, the company has stated agreement with the Danish Tax Appeals. No? Broad preliminary assessment of the case. The complainant has described why it is believed that Scott's assumptions that the intangible assets that were present in JAS in 1998 were transferred to A at the merger in 2006 is incorrect. No? So the complainant has described the following history. Okay. So for a number of years, J5AS was a successful Danish pharmaceutical company that carried out number 1, research and development, 2, production of pharmaceuticals, 3, tablet production. No? So packaging and marketing of pharmaceuticals in Denmark and abroad. No, the company thus had its own brands, production methods, sales subsidiaries in Sweden, Y4 country and Y5 country, and exports to other countries. No? Okay. So, anong nangyari sa ano natin? Scott's assumption that intangible assets were present in J5 in 1988, transferred to A at the merger in 2006, no, is incorrect. Okay. In 1998, J5AS was acquired by the German group J6, no, which established a group goodwill of the Danish krone 913 million. So ito yung ginawa nila, no? Nag-recognize sila ng goodwill amounting to DKK 913 million, no? So this group goodwill related to the total value of an ongoing pharmaceutical group with its own brands, no? So rights, foreign subsidiaries, and others. No? So tablet production closed in 2004 as it was not profitable. In 2005, G5AS was acquired by the Swiss group, no? Swiss Group B. In addition, the packaging plant was closed in 2006 as it was not profitable, no? So kinlose na. The production of pharmaceutical ingredients and research and the development activity was sold to the G10 in 2006. No? So this happened through a split of these activities into a new company or G10, which was subsequently sold. No? So in 2008, G10 was resold to the German group G12. No? So ano na sila. After which, it changed its name to G12 in 2009. No? But G12 went bankrupt. No? So, merge sila ng merge, tapos bankrupt, tapos i-dissolve na yung mga na-merge. No? So there was thus a gradual closure and divestment of the activities which originated from G5A8 AS no, in 1998, where there was a fully integrated pharmaceutical company until 2006 when the marketing activity was back. This must be seen in the light of the changing owners. No? Changing strategies and fierce price competition in the Nordic markets. So during this period, dividends of Danish krone 110 million were also distributed to J5AS. No? Okay. In the disputed income years 2006 to 2010, and operated exclusively as a sales company. No? So the intangible assets that existed in the company in 1998 were largely abandoned, disposed of at the end of 2006. In addition, the intangible assets thus existed in 1998 would in any case not have been operational for A, as the company, as mentioned, exclusively ran a sales company that marketed goods to other group of companies. No? So ito talaga yung nangyari. That's why we have to study this case in details. No? So the complainant has further pointed out that Scott's argument put forward in the consultation response to the Danish Tax Appeal Board recommendation that it should be considered to use a method other than TNMM. No? So in this part, yung namang pinag-argue nila yung considered to the method used is TNMM. No? So yun ang ina-argue nila. Is not, sabi naman ng Scott, is not in accordance with Scott's decision, no? Which specifically states that Scott agrees that the TNM method can be used. No? Furthermore, the complainant has pointed out that Scott now believes that the independent companies in the company's own benchmark are not comparable to A due to the existence of intangible assets, which is also inconsistent with Scott's decision, where Scott's own employment is based on the company's own statement and database survey. The complainant has stated that Scott's new view is based on the erroneous assumption that A, in the income years 2006 to 2010, was the owner of significant operating promotional intangible assets arising from G5. No? Ito na yung goodwill na inamortize nila ng 57 million a month. A year, no? And they amortize or depreciate it for a period of 16 years. Okay, so ito na. The decision of the National Tax Court. No? So, pursuant to the Tax Assessment Act, Section 2, Subsection 1, when calculating the taxable income, group companies, branches must apply prices and terms for financial transactions in accordance with what could have been achieved if the transactions have been concluded between independent parties. No? So, yun lang naman ang ina-after dyan eh. Dapat ang price nila hindi magkakalayo, no? Yung independent party at saka yung related parties. Excuse lang. Okay. So, anong sabi ng Scott? The Tax Assessment Act, Section 2, Subsection 1, shall be construed in accordance with the OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. No? Kaya nga, kahit anong tax authority, no, nire-respect nila yung OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. So, pursuant to Section 3B, Subsection 5, group companies have a duty to prepare and keep written documentation of how prices and terms are set for the controlled transactions. The documentation must form the basis for an assessment of whether prices and conditions comply with the arm's length principle, and it must be submitted to SCAT. No? So, upon request, parang sa atin din, no, na yung transfer pricing documentation natin, upon request of the exam commissioner, should be submitted, no? So, upon request, Executive Order Number 42 of 24 January 2006, if the taxpayer has not prepared documentation pursuant to subsection 5, SCAT has the option of discretionary employment of Section 3B, subsection 1 of the current Tax Control Act, no, 8, now subsection 9, and Section 5, subsection 3. No? Initially, it should be noted that Scott, in its decision, has referred to the fact that the correction was made on the basis of the Tax Control Act, Section 5, no, subsection 3, in conjunction with Section 3B, no. So, subsection 8, now subsection 9, as Scott has assessed that no action has been taken on prices and terms in accordance with the arm's length principle. No? The interpretation of the current Tax Control Act, Section 3B, Paragraph 8, now Paragraph 9, cannot be accepted. No? So, yan na yung sinabi ng court. The provisions must be interpreted as authorizing access to a discretionary determination of the income relating to the controlled transactions only if no transfer pricing documentation has been submitted or if the transfer pricing documentation provided cannot form the basis for an assessment of whether prices and conditions are determined in accordance with the arm's length principle. So it is the opinion of the National Tax Tribunal that the company's transfer pricing documentation constitutes a sufficient basis for being able to assess whether prices and conditions are in accordance with the arm's length principle. Section 3B, subsection 5 of the Tax Control Act. This is not disputed by Scott either. So hindi na nagreklamo yung Scott. It is then incumbent on Scott to prove that prices and conditions have not been in accordance with the arm's length principle and that correction in accordance with Section 2(1) of the Tax Assessment Act has therefore been justified. No? So in assessing the pricing, Scott has taken as its starting point the method that the company has used in its transfer pricing documentation, namely the transactional net margin method. Scott has not made a correction based on another method from the OECD transfer pricing guidelines, and it is therefore assumed that Scott agrees that the TMN method is the best applicable in the context of the comparability analysis, no? So in decision, Scott has also not corrected or commented on the comparable companies selected in the database survey, which form the basis for the comparability analysis. No? So it is therefore further assumed that Scott agrees with the company's choice of comparable. No? Companies with regard to functions, assets, including unrecognized and risks. No? It must then be decided whether amortization of goodwill and cost for integration of the IT system are to be included as a cost in connection with the determinations of the company's operating profit in the comparability analysis, where independent companies' operating profit is compared with the company's own results. No? So two members of the court, including the presiding judge, state the following. No? Okay. So ano na naman itong sinabi ng mga uh, two members in court, no? So according to the OECD transfer pricing guidelines, only those costs should be included in the comparability analysis that have an effect on the comparability indicator. No? So the following point in the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. Sa current, meron tayong 17 pala, OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines 2017, no? Cost and revenues that are not related to the controlled transactions under review should be excluded where they materially affect comparability with uncontrolled transactions, no? Kasi yun ang purpose ng magko-compare tayo sa arm's length principle. Okay. So an appropriate level of segmentation of the taxpayer's financial data is needed when determining or testing the net profit earned from a controlled transactions, no? So ito yung pinaghahandaan po natin sa documentation. Ano yun yung segmentation or this aggregation of the account, no? Na kailangan handa kayo and they are properly recorded, otherwise wala kayong papakita during the audit. Oh? Difficult comparability issues can arise where the accounting treatment of some items by potential third party is unclear, no? Or does not allow reliable measurement or adjustment. This can be the case in particular for depreciation, amortization, stock option, and pension cost. No? Ang dami. The decision whether or not to include such items in the determination of the net profit indicator for applying the transactional net margin method will depend on a weighing of their expected effects on the appropriateness of the net profit indicator to the circumstances of the transactions and on the reliability of the comparison. No? So, the question is thus whether the goodwill that arises in A at the merger in 2006 constitutes an operating promoting asset with significance for the company's earnings opportunities. No? Okay. So the goodwill that is the focal point in the present case arose from the then company G2AS, no? Buying up the shares in the company G5AS. No? Okay. So pharmaceuticals fabric at a higher price than the acquired company's book equity. Such goods will related to capital interest has no operational significance for the capital owning company. No? So sino yung capital owning company? The G2AS, no? Okay. Next. As the merger of the three companies in 2006 took place, no, nag-merge sila ng 2006. By the merger method, this goodwill on equity interest is transferred for accounting purposes to the continuing company. No? It is thus not a purchase and sale of the asset between the merged companies, but a merger of assets and liabilities. No? So the book goodwill in the merged company A is thus still a result of capital interest and not an expression of the acquisition of an operating related asset. No? Okay. For these reasons, these members of the court regard the amortization of the goodwill in question as an accounting item that does not affect the operations and thus the turnover in A. No? Okay, so it is hereby noted that the goodwill in question is in the specific case is considered as a result of previous share acquisition between the now merged companies. No decision has been made as to whether and in which cases amortization of goodwill must otherwise be included in the calculation of the income used in comparison with independent companies under the T&M method. Okay. The depreciation is thereby considered to be irrelevant to the comparability indicator used by the company in the comparability analysis, namely revenue. So therefore, the company has rightly deducted the depreciation. No? So when calculating the income included in the comparability analysis. No? Okay. So when amortization of goodwill is deducted in the calculation of the company's income, no? The company's result fall within the arm's length interval, no, or the interquartile range, which has been found through the company's own benchmark study, no? As Scott has not challenged. Okay. The benchmark itself for the comparable companies, there is thus no longer any basis for increasing the taxable income. The question of whether or not cost for integration or IT cost for the income year 2006 should be included in the comparability analysis then becomes irrelevant as the company's result, whether it is included or not, falls within the benchmark range for the comparable companies. No. Okay. So, alang oras na tayo, Hari?
1 hour 15 minutes.
Okay. So, this two members of the court therefore find that the complainant must be fully upheld and that scat increase must be reduced to 0 for all income year. No? So, two members of the court state the following. Kanina ilan yun? No? So, Scott's increase must be maintained on the basis of arguments put forward by Scott as to why the amortization of goodwill must be included in the calculation of the company's income using the T&M method. No? As there is tie, a decision is made after the challenges vote so that Scott increases are reduced to 0 for the income years 2006 to 2010. So remember na itong taxable year 2006 and 2010, ito yung year under dispute, no? it is not part of the case before the High Court whether A has been entitled to deduct the IT cost of Dennis Krohn 10 million for the income year 2006, no? Excuse me. Okay, so Dennis Krohn in connection with the comparability analysis. The Ministry of Taxation has thus only filed a claim that A's and B's annual income for 2006 as for the other income year covered by the case be increased by uh, Dennis Krohn 57,101,000 corresponding to the amortized goodwill, no? So itong 57.1 million, ito yung um, goodwill na na-amortize nila. So for the purpose of the case, A has prepared calculations that estimate the value of unrecognized goodwill in part of the other companies included in the benchmark. The Ministry of Taxation has disputed the result of these calculations. So in addition, A has presented information from 1A, J13, regarding the market conditions regarding the year observed by the case, as well as annual reports and analysis regarding the companies J14 and J15, which reportedly complete in the same market as A, J14 and J15, no, are like a part of an international group, no? So explanation. An explanation of KR has been given in the High Court, no? So during the case, KR has explained, among other things, that in April 2007, he was employed as chief accountant in A. So today, he has another position in the group. He was chief accountant until 2013 or 2014. No? He was responsible for ensuring that the financial records were correct in relation to the accounting legislation and the legislation in general. No? Okay. May viewers pa?
6 viewers po.
Okay. Nandyan na sila, Banje.
Ako ma'am, sinabihan ko.
He was not part of the group when G16 was acquired and transformed into A in 2004, or when G3 was acquired and merged into the company in 2006. Oh, he has been involved in preparing the accounts from 2007 onwards. Oh. He has also been responsible for that transfer pricing documentation from 2006 onwards. No? He has also prepared impairment test from 2007 onwards. No? So G7 is a global pharmaceutical company that develops, manufactures, and sells both patent-protected medicines and generica. Generica is the term for medicines that are not protected by a patent, no? So A only sells generica and total has approximately 20,000 employees globally. No? Okay. So in 2005, the A group acquired G3, which was also a global pharmaceutical company within generica. No, it is this opinion that A bought J3 because one would like a larger platform in Europe for generica. So after acquiring J3, A and J3 were merged in 2006. So nag-merge na naman, no? In the merger, a value of J3 was to be determined for accounting purposes, no? Which corresponded to the amount that a purchasing company in Denmark was to provide for the shares in J3 Denmark. He has no insight into how the company was valued as it had happened before he took office. No? Okay. Ilang oras na?
1 hour 20 minutes.
Okay. So, in the merger, a value of G3 was to be determined for accounting purposes, which corresponded to the amount that a purchasing company in Denmark was to provide for the shares in G3 Denmark. No? He has no insight into how the company was valued, and it had happened before he took office. No? So, in the TPA documentation for 2006 and 2007, a picture of the company structure before and after the merger has been inserted. So ano ba siya before and after the merger? Before the merger, there was a unit called G2AS, which was holding company for the other, no, G3A, Sir in Denmark. It had no activity of its own. Above G3 was B Denmark, which was the Danish sales company of these products. From here, patent-protected medicine was sold. No? Following the merger in 2006, a Denmark and G3AS were merged into a Denmark. Under this company were a Sweden, a Norway, and a Y5 country. There was no actual turnover in the Swedish, Norwegian, and Finnish companies. Their costs were reimbursed from a Denmark with a markup. The cost of these companies were thus part of the cost in a Denmark. Okay. Before the merger, A was located in Y3 by and had approximately 60 employees. No? G3 was a somewhat larger business which was based in Y1 by, where 1A was production and warehouse. Okay, so in addition, there were sales and distribution. There were approximately 250 employees. They also sold generic drugs. No? Okay. So it was decided to discontinue the activities in G3 and that the head office should be located in Y3 by at the A. G3's activities in Y1 by were thus for a number of years discontinued or transferred to A in Y3 by. No? So during this time, a number of employees were laid off. The management team in G3 disappeared over the period 2005-2006. So in the finance department, they were challenged by the fact that A and G3 had two different financial management systems, and there was a replacement of a number of employees, no? Including seminar executives, senior executives. The last activities at G3's address were discontinued in the first half of 2008. No? Okay. So on the IT front, they put it all together in a financial management system, and they choose to continue with a system. No? So there were quite a few consultants in this task. There was also a large turnover of employees. No? So the closure of G3's activities took a long time because they wanted to wind up the activities appropriately. The production facilities were sold from in 2007 to the external investor. No? Okay. The transfer pricing documentation for 2006 and 2007 mentions that they had extraordinary expenses of Danish krone 37.5 million. Danish krone to retention bonus employees, which was a retention bonus for employees who wanted to retain for a certain period to ensure the transfer of activities or knowledge. So they knew very well that they would be fired, but they wanted to keep them while the activities were carried out. No? Okay. May nanonood pa? Wala na.
May pamamali.
Okay, so the transfer pricing documentation for 2006 and 2007 also states rent band, no? Yung rent band, which were costs in connection with the lease. Environmental cleanup, which arose from an environmental case on the property, no? Impairment fixed assets, which were extraordinary depreciation on real estate, no? Further integration costs, which were expenses for IT and consultants. No? Goodwill depreciation, which were amortized of goodwill, and extraordinary write-off inventory, no? Which were extraordinary amortization of inventory. These amounts were adjusted by ACE margin before calculating the margin, which was compared with the benchmark companies, no? So in the period 2006 to 2010, there was a declining number of employees in A, which is appear from the annual report for 2010. No? The number of employees thus decreased from 2,065 in 2006 to 61 in 2010. No? So personal cost decreased in the same period from approximately in 2006 to Dennis Krohn 58 million in 2010. No? So yun pala yung mga approximate nila na personnel cost. No? So following the merger, A was located in Y3 by until the company was restructured in the spring of 2009, no? And moved to Y1 by. For the purpose of the restructuring, a proposal from the Dennis Executive Board to the global management was prepared in November 2008. In collaboration with external consultants, entitled Creating Nordic Powerhouse in Y1 by. No, it is described here that the turnover fell very sharply. It has been realized that the market had changed so that it was exclusively price drive, no? Which A was that G5A is entitled to. That was the background to the desire for restructuring. So, ganun nangyayari po yung restructuring. No? Okay. So, new rules had been introduced for the pricing of medicines, which means that pharmacists had to dispense cheaper substitutable products whenever possible. This means that A's previous promotional activities in which they had employees driving around to doctors and pharmacies to create visibility about their product names were no longer important. No? So there was a unique competition on price. One wanted to save money by pooling the task or outsourcing the activities. No? So the long-term goal was again to achieve a larger market share. Okay. So may strategies sila, no, na in-employ. So in addition, they wanted to cut the portfolio so that they choose the products from which they could not compare. No? One would instead launch biosimilars, but it required large investment. The reason for this was the competitive situation on biosimilar was not so fierce. A dismissed employees in the Swedish, Norwegian, and Finnish companies, and it ended up that the units were completely shut down in Y6 land and Y5 land. The fact that the price of products fell over time was not a new phenomenon, but it happened much faster and the fall was more marked than before. May nanonood pa? Ilan? 6 pa. Sige, tapusin natin to kasi although hindi naman natin matapos tong case na to na ngayon kasi mahaba pa. But we will continue, no? Okay. Ano oras na?
1 hour 30 minutes.
Okay. So next tayo. So an overview has been prepared of A's 3 most traded products, product 1, product 2, and product 3, no? The overview shows a very sharp decrease in revenue for all the 3 products, which together accounted for a significant part of A's revenue, no? The figure for product 1 shows that even though several price pieces were sold for a period, the falling prices overall led to a falling turnover. A also experienced sharp price reduction on product 2 and product 3, and here no additional sales were compensated. No? Lakas ng ulan, may bagyo ba?
Wala naman.
Okay. A has also drawn up a comparison with 2 competing companies, G14 and G15. No? These companies were chosen because, like A, they only sold generic medicine. The figures show a trend of downward results also for these companies until 2009 and 2010, when there was an upward trend both for A and for the 2 companies. No? I drew up 2 types of budgets. No? An annual, which began the preparation just after summer. No? This was relatively detailed. In addition, 5-year budgets were drawn up, which were less detailed. No? Impairment tests were prepared based on the 5-year budgets. The pricing was based on the resale price. No? So, yan ang ginamit niya na method. They had a process where new sales prices were used and they calculated backwards from here. No? After which they requested a purchase price corresponding to 70% of the resale price. No? There was a negotiation as to whether that price could be obtained from the producers. No? Among other things, negotiated based on how much one would buy. No? So other countries also seized productivity capacity. That was a real factor, even though it was intra-group negotiations. No? It could well be that one could not agree on the price if the resale price was better in year 7 country than in Denmark. Okay, it was therefore not always that they could get the products they demanded. No? So in the negotiation, they steered after buying in at prices that were 30% below the resale price. So it was the experience that A in Denmark could hereby have its cost covered. No? Okay. Prices were initially set once a year. Ito yung prices nung commodity nila, no? But if the resale price fell more than expected, the price could possibly be renegotiated. However, it was not always possible to negotiate a low price, knowing that price would fall over the year. This was included in the price negotiations. However, prices were not always hit correctly. No? So in the first years, it was not possible to sell at prices which meant that only 70% of the resale price went to purchases. No? When price fell, it also led to write down on inventory, which is described in the audit report for A's annual report for 2006, no? Items 29 and 3, and in item 20 in the audit report for the annual report for 2008. No? Okay. Inventory write-down are an ordinary item in the accounts. If a product expires, okay, so before it is sold, no? So write-down were seen in the employee every year. It was also related to the falling price. If prices fell, the value of inventories was adjusted downward. Okay. The value of inventories was also adjusted if a lower price was agreed the following year. No impairment test was performed in 2006 using the valuation from the acquisition of J3. No? So, yun yung nangyari. So, he has prepared impairment test from 2007. Ito na yung ginawa. Onwards. And the calculations have been presented in the case. No? So, the calculation for use in the test for 2007 were made in early 2008 for use in the annual report. No? The impairment test was calculated on the basis of expected earnings and consumption of goods. And the calculations were based on the prices available at the time. Okay. Post-10 TP adjustment. In the impairment test for 2007, no, covers an expected adjustment of the purchase prices because the prices were adjusted to end at gross margin of around 30%. No? Okay. So in the group both G3 globally, part of the prices related to G3's product rights which could be accessed. No? G3 had activities in many countries, but the rights lay in the parent company. Okay. Internally in the accounts, depreciation of products rights was made down in the individual countries. And this is what lies behind the item. No? So, supplemental data, the tax-deductible amortization and depreciation, amortization and depreciation under IFRS. No? So, it is technically something like or called push-down accounting. No? So, where you move a depreciation from the parent company down to the individual countries. No? So, the rights were not something A owned, and therefore they deducted these expenses before performing impairment test. No? Okay. Ano naman tong items ng cost of goods sold, no? Ang lakas ng kidlat, ah. So the item cost of goods sold in the impairment test for 2007 stands for cost of goods sold. This includes purchase prices but also depreciation of product rights that were owned globally. Okay, but not A in Denmark. No? Cost of goods sold contains an expense of Danish krone 32.4 million. No? So Danish krone 32.4 million is added to this matter. No? And therefore, DKK 32.4 million is added again under supplemental data. No? So he added his account to make the calculations more accurate for A in Denmark. No? Okay. So goodwill amortization is not part of the impairment test because the test is about whether the value of goodwill is correct. No? So the test must therefore not be affected by the goodwill amortization. This also means that if you want to compare earning before income tax in the impairment test with the realized EBIT in the accounts, then the realized EBIT must be adjusted for amortization of goodwill. No? Okay. The item net working capital is the working capital. Fixed assets are assets such as tablets, chairs, no? Goodwill is also goodwill that must be decided on the size of the calculation should show that you had values at least corresponding to total assets. Otherwise, you had to write down goodwill, no? Sinong magbabayad yun? The company has no intangible assets other than goodwill. Mail free cash flow is discounted to present value. No? The amount recoverable amount of approximately 1.97 billion Danish krone in the impairment test for 2007 corresponded to the company's sales value. As recoverable amount exceeded the value of the assets of the company, 1.3 billion, no? Danish krone, there should be no write-down. It was calculated on the basis of a discount rate of 7%. That figure is determined for its country from the country's international headquarters. He does not know how to arrive at exactly 7%. No? Has prepared a similar impairment test for 2008. No? Here, recoverable amounts was lower than total assets. No? So then, there was a write-down on goodwill, no? A write-down was made on the parent company's goodwill and not on Ace, no? He does not know why the write-down took place in the parent company. One could also have depreciated in A. Ito yung sa goodwill, no? Extraordinary depreciation in A. Bakit extraordinary? Kasi hindi na siya doon sa regular na operating expense. Would also have led to recoverable amount would have exceeded total assets, which was the goal of the write-down. No? So in 2008 to 2010, A did not reach the expected result, which had to do with the competitive situation, no? The merger of the company, and that one did not sell at the expected prices. No? 2008 was the only one of the years covered by the case where the value of goodwill was written down after impairment testing. From 2011 onwards, there has also been no need to write down after impairment test. No? A has also made a profit since. The annual report for 2010 was submitted when the tax authorities first approached about the case. No? The tax transfer pricing documentation has only been prepared after the tax authorities' inquiry, and thus shall all the annual reports have been submitted. No? So, the decrease in the number of employees who can be seen in the annual report for 2010 was within all types of employees. In 2006 and 2007, it was primarily the closure of G3 in Copenhagen. That was the reason, and it does concern people who were engaged in both administration, sales, marketing, warehousing. In 2008 and 2009, there was the relocation of A from Y3 city to Y1 city, where a wide range of registration and administrative staff were laid off. No? The focus was also changed so that the company concentrated exclusively on talking to clinics and doctors about non-substitutable products. The substitutable products sold themselves at the price due to the changes in the legislation. there was increased price pressure from 2006 onwards, no? But there was also price pressure before. So the recommendation to the global management with the heading Creating Nordic Powerhouse in Copenhagen, he has not himself helped to prepare, no? So it does not say anything about the price you bought at. The fact was that there was an annual price revision with internal suppliers based on a gross margin of 30%. No? So it was a policy that the group had. It was a guideline that they should pass on 70% of the sales price to the manufacturer. Some products were above and others below, but the target was 70%. No? So the remaining 30% was to cover ACE cost in Denmark. The margin was determined on the basis of what was needed to cover the fixed cost. No? He does not know if comparisons were made across countries such that a company that had valuable IP rights was treated differently than a similar company in another country that did not putol, no? He's not aware of what the policy was for the group companies in other countries, but the distribution of 70% to the manufacturer and 30% to the distributor was valid at least for the Nordic countries, no? So in Denmark, it should be enough for the fixed cost and to create a profit. He was not himself involved in the price negotiation, but he believes that it took place at the end of the previous year so that the prices for 2008 were negotiated at the end of 2007. He assumes that the expected sales prices were assessed on the basis of the expected ano yun, bukas ang pintuan dyan? Sinara. Were assessed on the basis of the expected price and market development on the individual product based on the knowledge one had at the time of the negotiation. However, he was not himself involved in this part. They have not been good, this assessment in the years 2006 to 2010 when looking at the results afterwards. In the note of 22 May 2018 on the impairment test prepared, which he has written, it appears from point 3.3 that goodwill from G16 was not activated in A. It was located in B and was not activated. Goodwill from G3, which was in A, was activated. An impairment test the value of goodwill. No? So the goodwill did tested the value of what was the total goodwill related to A's activities, no? So ano ba yung relationship ng goodwill to the activities of the in this case A, no? Part of the goodwill lay in the parent's company, B, and the rest in A itself. When calculating what A should earn to justify the set value of goodwill, both had to be taken into account, no? So when the notes to the annual report for B for 2006 state Danish krone 606 million, no? Danish krone as the group goodwill calculated in connection with the acquisition. He does not know with certainty what the stated goodwill relates to, no? Biro mo depreciate mo siya pero hindi mo alam kung ano yun siya, no? But he assumes that it relates to the purchase of G16. Item 10 of the audit report for A's annual report for 2006 states that the value of goodwill has been assessed. No? He has not seen the assessment mentioned in the audit report and he has only heard about it from the case. When the same protocol section 8 listed new transfer prices, no? It is a reference to a debate that took place every year. When he prepared the impairment test in question, he used the figures that were in the budget, no? The 1.972 72 billion mentioned in the impairment test for 2007 is the price one could expect to get for the company if one traded the company. If you get the price, the value of goodwill would be approximately 1.6 billion kron. He was not the one who prepared the account for G7, and he does not know why in 2008 they chose to make the extraordinary write-down of 225 Danish kron, no? Million. The Danish kron in the parent companies instead of in A. He does not remember the circumstances that led to the write-down in the parent company. Ito na yung sinasabi ko na during the trial, dapat alam mo lahat, no? Kasi kung hindi, that is already questionable and the case will be resolved against you. No? If one had written down in A, one could get into trouble with equity. It was the CFO B who decided where the depreciation would take place. He has not recommended that the depreciation be made in B for the sake of A's equity. No? In his opinion, it is a fair statement of equity when A's equity in the annual report for 2008 is stated at 56 million Danish kron. No? So when it is stated in the audit report for the annual report for 2008 in item 10 that an influx of capital is expected, he is not aware of what the management had told the auditor. He also does not remember the reason why the auditor stated in paragraph 11 that there was currently no basis for writing down goodwill. When the auditor in paragraph 8 mentioned an appropriate profit, he does not know at what level the auditor has assessed that the profit should be. Internally, they calculated with a 30% gross margin, not with revenue targets. The lower prices and credit notes mentioned in the same place in the audit report must be adjustments that were negotiated between A and the manufacturer. The said credit note issued in 2009 must be for the purchases made at the beginning of 2009. When point 9 of the audit report for 2009 mentioned lower purchase prices in the future, it must be a reference to the prices negotiated with the manufacturer. The same prices were used when impairment tests were subsequently prepared. Anong oras na?
52 minutes.
Ha?
1 hour 52.
Okay. The transfer pricing documentation was prepared in 2011 and covers the years 2006 and onwards. When it was stated in the transfer pricing documentation for 2006, an amortization of goodwill, not an operating expense as such, then it is an expression that it is not an operating cost, as if one wears on a machine that at some point will be worth down. No? So in the same place is stated that the goodwill amortization is not deductible. It means that the company's tax result is greater than the company result. However, the tax status of the goodwill amortization was irrelevant. No? So it was necessary to deduct the amortization of goodwill in order to be able to compare A with the selected comparison companies. What you do with all benchmarking is to make your accounting figures as comparable as possible with the benchmark used. The comparison companies were selected in a database. He was not himself involved in selecting the company, so he cannot say whether in the connection it was examined whether the comparison companies had activated or not activated goodwill. The benchmark analyses were available in the group. They were not prepared for use in the case. He found it natural to disregard amortization of goodwill, as one could have chosen to submit account in accordance with international standards, where one had not had to make deductions for goodwill. In that case, goodwill would have been retained in the account at cost. No? The price adjustment that occurred during a year were not prompted by the auditor's comment in the various audit protocol. It was driven internally by a desire to achieve a 70-30 distribution. He has also prepared an impairment test of 2018. it showed goodwill in the group corresponding to a few 100 million kron. No? So, yun yung findings nila during the litigation or during the trials. No? So, please take note that in transfer pricing documentation, in this case, yung mga findings during the litigation ng case or ng trials, they always refer to the transfer pricing documentation. No? That's how important transfer pricing documentation is, or the transfer pricing analysis report made by the transfer pricing analyst. No? Anong oras na, Hari?
1 hour 55 minutes.
55 minutes. Okay. So, next is the procedure. No? So, in support of the principal claim, the Ministry of Taxation has argued that it is A and B who have the burden of proof that the amortization of goodwill made in the comparability analysis must be disregarded. No? In this connection, the Ministry of Taxation has referred to the fact that related parties must calculate prices and terms for their intra-group transactions in the calculation of their taxable income, which correspond to the price and terms that independent parties would set for similar transactions. Prices and terms between related parties cannot be taken for granted, and Section 2 of the Tax Assessment Act, therefore, authorizes a correction access for the tax authorities so that the controlled transactions are brought to arm's length level. However, the transfer pricing documentation that A and B were obliged to prepare in accordance with Section 3B of the Tax Control Act does not prove that action was taken on arm's length terms. So, on the contrary, this documentation shows that A's prices and terms and thus results were not on arm's length terms and thus not in accordance with Section 2 of the Tax Assessment Act. So, yun talagang iniisip ko sa mga ginagawa kong transfer pricing analysis report. Wala ka talagang magawa eh. Kasi you cannot distort the result. So, ano yung sasabihin mo talaga? That the transactions of the party is not arm's length, no? Kasi yun talaga ang lalabas eh. No? It is A was prepared the transfer pricing documentation, including the comparability analysis, which should show that the company had observed the arm's length principle. The comparability analysis is a key part of the company's documentation. Yes. That trading took place on arm's length terms. Kaya nga, nagpapagawa ng transfer pricing analysis report, no? This analysis showed that A's income differed significantly from the income of companies that did not have extensive intragroup trading, no? So ano yung nakita dito? Yung kanyang ginawang transfer pricing analysis, ang income ng company, which is the Pharma Distributor, AS in this case, ibang-iba kaysa doon sa mga companies na hindi gumamit ng amortization ng goodwill. Because in previous years, panay income sila, but the moment na in-inject na nila, nag-claim na sila ng amortization ng goodwill, loss na sila ng loss, no? Imagine they claim the goodwill, they amortize the goodwill for 16 years, no? And that is 57 million per year, no? Okay. This analysis showed that A's income differed significantly from the income of companies that did not have extensive intragroup trading. A was therefore forced to improve its results to be within the calculated benchmark, and the company did so in particular by disregarding the significant ordinary amortization of goodwill of 57.1 of the company's adjusted operating margin. Anong oras na?
1 hour 59.
Okay. So, yan po yung importance ng ating transfer pricing analysis report, no? So, that is the very purpose why meron tayong BIR Form 1709 that should be attached to the income tax return comes now the filing itong April 15, no? Bakit? Kasi based on that, madali na makita mag-assist ng BIR kung dapat ba talaga yung isang taxpayer is subject to transfer pricing audit, no? Okay, so our topic tonight is the country by country report, and then yung ating continuation or part 3 of the case, no? Ito yung Pharma Distributor A is versus the Eastern High Court of Denmark, no? So maganda itong case na to because it teaches us kung papaano ginagamit ng court yung ating transfer pricing analysis report, no? So, pag ikaw yung gumawa kasi ng transfer pricing analysis, hindi ibig sabihin na binabayaran ka ng kliyente mo, you do all the favor in your clients na kahit na ano yung result, i-distort mo. Hindi po ganun, no? Kasi transfer pricing analysis report ito to aid or to help the user also of the financial statement and also the tax authority. So kung ano yung result, yun talaga ang ipapakita mo. Wala tayong choice doon, no? Okay, so with that, I would like to say thank you and thank you very much po sa ating mga viewers at saka ating mga subscribers, no? Thank you very much and let's call it a night.